Did you get her out of the water? I can't. I couldn't get the water out.
Totaling more than $1 million. And the timing of this is suspicious too. All the policies were created just 1 week before her sudden death.
Since the day my mom died, I was concerned that my father killed her, and I've been fighting to get justice for this case ever since then.
Behind closed doors, family ties can turn deadly. From Joel Guy Jr.'s horrific betrayal to Martin MacNeill's chilling deception, these killers didn't just end lives. They destroyed the trust that held their families together. Their shocking crimes reveal how greed, control, and hate can grow where love should be. Let's begin.
And why did he have a lot of guns?
He was a conspiracy theorist. I don't know. He loved shooting. I'm joking about the conspiracy theorists. And maybe it's in my head.
This story takes us back to November 2016 in Knoxville, Tennessee. Joel Michael Guy Sr. and his wife Lisa had spent their lives working hard. They were excited to retire soon. But the person they trusted most, their son, was secretly planning something horrific. Joel Guy Jr. was 28 years old. He had never worked a single day and depended entirely on his parents for everything. When he learned that his parents were about to stop supporting him financially, he decided he couldn't let that happen. Instead of finding a job, he planned to kill them so he could collect a $500,000 life insurance policy. He even wrote detailed plans in a notebook, later called the Book of Premeditation. In this journal, he listed everything he needed: acid, knives, plastic bins, and chemicals to dissolve human remains.
Room above the garage.
You know the Saranac copy what you provided?
Yes.
And we moved these in as State's Exhibits 333 through 347.
On Thanksgiving weekend, Joel Jr. visited his parents' home, hoping for a peaceful and joyful family gathering. However, within 2 days, unexpected events turned the atmosphere into one of deep concern and sadness. First, Joel Jr. attacked his father upstairs in the exercise room, stabbing him over 40 times. The room showed signs of a violent struggle. Later that day, when his mother Lisa returned home from grocery shopping, she was ambushed too. She was stabbed more than 30 times, and many of her ribs were broken. Joel Jr. carried out a deeply troubling act that shocked everyone. He attempted to destroy important evidence to cover up what had happened, using harmful substances and disturbing methods that made the scene even more heartbreaking for investigators. But during the attack, he cut his own hands badly. He left the crime scene to buy first aid supplies, leaving the house unlocked and groceries lying on the floor. When Lisa didn't show up for work, a concerned coworker asked the police to check on her. Officers arrived at the house and immediately noticed something strange: perishable food melting in the entryway and an awful smell seeping through the door. Inside the house, investigators found a very disturbing scene. There were unusual items on the stove, harmful chemicals being used improperly, and a mess that left them deeply unsettled. It was a scene unlike anything they had ever encountered. Joel Guy Jr.'s motive was simple: money. He believed killing both parents was the easiest way to secure his future.
Joel Guy, now 30, was arrested in Baton Rouge and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He has since been held in the Knox County Detention Facility.
Police quickly gathered surveillance footage showing Joel Jr. buying all the supplies weeks earlier: acid, knives, and plastic bins, using cash so he wouldn't be traced. He even tried to stage the house to make it look like his father had committed the crime. Within days, the FBI and local authorities tracked him down in Baton Rouge. He was arrested as he tried to drive away. In court, he showed no remorse. After a short trial, the jury found him guilty of both murders and mistreatment of a corpse. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Later appeals were denied, and he remains behind bars in Tennessee.
I need to make sure I don't display any emotion. Then it's just natural that you're going to do that. And as I said, I have no idea what the verdict's going to be.
This case shocked everyone, not only because of the conflict, but because of the betrayal. Joel Michael Guy Jr. destroyed the people who loved him most, all because he didn't want to grow up and take care of himself. The house they dreamed of retiring in became the place where their lives ended in the most unthinkable way. Our next case is about pure evil, where a woman was killed even after she pleaded for protection.
There do appear to be some mental health concerns. He also is a United States Marine Corps.
In December 2022, Milford, Connecticut became the scene of a crime that would haunt a family forever. Ewan DeWitt, a man with a long history of hostility, killed his former girlfriend, Julie Minogue, inside her own home. Julie was a mother of 3, and 2 of her children were home when their world changed in the most tragic way. Before that night, Julie had lived in fear. She had already filed a restraining order against DeWitt because she worried he would hurt her. She even told police she was scared he might kill her. Just 5 days after she was granted a full no-contact order, DeWitt forced his way into her home with an axe. When police arrived, they found Julie dead. Investigators learned that DeWitt had a past of household chaos. He had been arrested years earlier for assaulting Julie. Despite the restraining orders and warnings, he carried out the attack she feared most. During the court hearings, DeWitt's lawyer tried to explain that he acted out of depression, PTSD, and anger. But the state's attorney said this was no sudden outburst. His actions were planned and deliberate. In the courtroom, DeWitt showed no real remorse. When the judge warned him to control himself after he had an outburst, DeWitt replied, "That'd be great," showing clear disrespect for everyone in the room.
They ordered the arrest of Julie Minogue's ex-boyfriend Ewan DeWitt for violating her protective order.
While DeWitt's defense tried to say he lost control because of emotional struggles and substance use, the truth remained. Julie had done everything she could to protect herself and her children. She followed the law, filed restraining orders, and asked for help. But DeWitt ignored all of it because he could not accept her leaving him. In March, DeWitt accepted a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to murder and risk of injury to a child. On the day of sentencing, he was given 40 years in prison for killing and 10 years for risk of injury, to be served at the same time. However, instead of showing any guilt, he erupted in an outburst in court.
You would die the way you lived, alone, worthless and forgotten. Spend every day behind bars knowing the world didn't lose anything when it locked you away.
In court, Julie's family spoke through tears. Her sister described the heartbreak that would never end. Her mother said she was denied even the chance to say goodbye because of the atrocity that took Julie's life. Her oldest son called DeWitt a disgusting coward who took away their mother, a strong woman who had raised 3 boys alone. Her father, who attended every court session, said he would always carry the horror of imagining his daughter's last moments. This case stands as a painful reminder that household chaos can have devastating consequences, no matter how many times a victim asks for help. Our next case shows how a husband's rage over losing control turned deadly.
I'm thankful that this exit has occurred. It brings closure to us as a family.
On July 12, 2008, in Cary, North Carolina, 34-year-old Nancy Cooper laced up her sneakers and went for a run. She never came back. 2 days later, her body was discovered in a drainage ditch, and an autopsy revealed she had been strangled. At first, people thought it was a random act of atrocity, but attention quickly turned to someone much closer to home, her estranged husband, Brad Cooper. Brad and Nancy's marriage had been falling apart. Nancy wanted a fresh start. She planned to move back to Canada with her 2 daughters. Brad wasn't just unhappy, he was angry. That anger would soon land him in a courtroom, facing the most serious charge of all, taking the life of his wife. As police dug into the case, they found something strange on Brad's laptop. A Google Maps search, done the day before Nancy's disappearance, pinpointed the exact spot where her body would later be found. To investigators, this looked like a smoking gun. Brad Cooper was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. In 2011, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, but Brad never stopped claiming he was innocent. Then came a shocking twist. Years after the trial, Brad's legal team discovered something troubling. The court had blocked 2 key witnesses from testifying, experts who could have shown that someone else may have tampered with Brad's computer. In 2013, the North Carolina Court of Appeals agreed. They ruled that Brad Cooper hadn't been given a fair trial and granted him a retrial.
He could talk about how people could break into networks. And by the way, no part of his evaluation included the 3825 router and any security measures that had. But he did not give an opinion.
The motive the prosecution presented was simple but powerful. Brad was furious over losing control over his wife, his family, and his life. He couldn't bear the thought of Nancy leaving with the kids, and in their eyes, that rage turned deadly. However, Brad insisted he was framed. He believed someone with access to his computer could have planted the map search. And without that, the case against him fell apart. After his conviction was overturned, Brad Cooper pleaded guilty to second-degree murder on September 2, 2014, just before his retrial was scheduled to start.
Pending a hearing on any motion that he might make concerning conditions of pretrial release within the next
He was sentenced to 12 to 15 years in prison and received credit for the time he had already served since his 2008 arrest. The retrial decision reignited debates across the country. Some believed justice was being served. Others thought it was a miscarriage of justice in reverse.
With Nancy, Bella especially, it destroyed her for many years, and she's gotten over it. She's moved past.
As of now, Brad Cooper's story sits in a gray zone. He was granted a second chance, but whether that chance will lead to freedom or another life sentence is still unknown. One woman went for a morning jog and never came home. One man may spend his life behind bars. But somewhere in this tangled web of courtroom drama and digital footprints is the truth. Our next case is a pure nightmare, where siblings betrayed their mother's trust in the worst way.
You'll hear how on July the 16th, Sheila Murray died.
In September 1996, siblings Karen and Michael Murray were convicted of causing their mother's death and received 60-year prison sentences each. In August 2019, in Johnson City, Tennessee, something unthinkable happened. Two siblings, Karen Murray and her brother, Michael Murray, were supposed to care for their disabled mother, Sheila Murray. But instead of helping her, they did something that shocked everyone who heard the story. Sheila was 68 years old and could not fully care for herself. She depended on her children to help her with her daily needs. But in the summer of 2019, she was taken to the hospital in terrible condition. Doctors quickly realized she had been suffering from severe neglect. Sadly, after some time in hospital, Sheila passed away. When investigators started asking questions, it became clear this was more than just an accident or a misunderstanding. Something deliberate and cruel had happened inside that home. TBI special agents, along with the Johnson City Police Department and Adult Protective Services, spent months piecing together what had happened.
What kind of relationship did you have with your brother?
It was your typical one, but I think as I went off to college, we weren't really that close once I left home.
They learned that Michael and Karen were their mother's main caregivers, but instead of showing care and love, they neglected her to the point that it cost Sheila her life. Although officials never shared every detail about the mistreatment, it was severe enough for the case to turn into a criminal investigation. In March 2021, a Washington County grand jury indicted both Karen and Michael on charges of first-degree murder and aggravated neglect of a vulnerable adult. Each was arrested and held on a $250,000 bond. As the trial moved forward, prosecutors worked to prove that the siblings' actions were intentional and deadly. In June 2024, the jury reached a decision that stunned the community. Karen and Michael were found guilty on all counts. To this day, investigators haven't shared every detail about why the siblings did what they did. Some believed they simply did not want to care for their mother anymore, or that they thought no one would notice. Whatever their reasons, the neglect led directly to Sheila's death.
Year-old Sheila Murray lying on a hospital bed. On that form, on some of that feces. Also in that hospital bed with her.
On October 3, 2024, the court handed down the sentence. Karen and Michael Murray were each sentenced to life in prison. They will never again be free to harm anyone. While the verdict was read, the siblings remained stone-faced and showed no emotion for their heinous act. This case is heartbreaking because it was not a stranger who caused Sheila's death. It was her children, the very people she trusted the most. Her story is a sad reminder that vulnerable adults need protection, and that neglect can be just as deadly as ferocity. Our next case is pure horror. A doctor whose hidden darkness destroyed the woman he promised to love forever.
Did you get her out of the water? I can't. I couldn't get started. Let the water out.
Michelle MacNeill seemed to have it all. She was a kind and loving mother of 8, a talented musician, and a former beauty queen who cared deeply about her family. She had been married for almost 30 years to Martin MacNeill, a successful doctor in Utah. To everyone around them, they looked like the perfect family. But behind closed doors, there were secrets Michelle could never have imagined would cost her life. In early 2007, Martin began pressuring Michelle to get cosmetic surgery. She did not feel ready because she wanted to get healthier first, but Martin insisted it would improve their marriage. Finally, Michelle agreed to the surgery, hoping it might help them reconnect. While she recovered at home, Michelle grew worried. She told her daughter Alexis that Martin was giving her too much medication and that he might be hiding something. One day, Michelle whispered, "If anything happens to me, make sure it wasn't your dad."
Since the day my mom died, I was concerned that my father killed her, and I've been fighting to get justice for this case ever since then.
On April 11, 2007, just days after her surgery, Michelle was found unresponsive in the bathtub. At first, the autopsy said she died of heart disease. Martin told everyone it was a mournful accident, but Michelle's children felt something was wrong. They knew their mom had been afraid. For years, the truth stayed hidden, but after family members pushed authorities to look again, medical experts said the mix of substances in Michelle's body could have caused her heart to stop. Investigators also learned Martin had been having an affair with a woman named Gypsy Willis. Just 2 weeks after Michelle's funeral, Martin brought Gypsy into the house as a nanny.
Here, MacNeill tried to give his wife CPR, or that he even needed anyone's help to get her out of the tub.
In 2012, Martin was charged with Michelle's killing. Prosecutors shared shocking evidence. Martin had planned the crime carefully. He convinced the surgeon to prescribe a powerful substance he knew would be hard to trace. He also told people he knew ways to make a death look like a heart attack. During the trial, Martin's daughters testified against him. Witnesses said he acted cold and only seemed worried about himself. The jury listened to all the evidence for weeks before deciding what they believed had happened. Martin wanted Michelle out of the way so he could be with Gypsy and keep control of the family. He had also been living a double life, lying about his past and cheating for years. Michelle's trust in him became the very thing he used to harm her.
The jury, having reviewed the evidence and the testimony in the case, find the defendant as to count 1, murder, guilty.
In November 2013, Martin MacNeill was found guilty of killing Michelle and obstructing the investigation. He was sentenced to at least 17 years in prison and remained emotionless while the courtroom was filled with tears. Later, he was also convicted of mistreating his daughter Alexis. Just a few years into his sentence, in 2017, Martin ended his life in prison. This case broke the hearts of everyone who loved Michelle. Her children had to fight for years to bring the truth to light and protect their family. Even though justice was finally served, nothing could bring back their mother. Michelle's story is a reminder that behind some smiling faces, darkness can hide, and it takes courage to stand up for what's right. Our next case was supposed to be a dream honeymoon, turned into a deadly mystery beneath the waves.
I also told her that if she had any doubts about this, she didn't have to do it.
Do you, Gabe and Tina,
And she told me, she said, "Dad, this is going to be a good day. This is what I want."
will bind you as husband and wife?
Christina Tina Thomas began dating David Gabriel Gabe Watson while they were both studying at the University of Alabama, Birmingham in January 2001. Just a short time later, the couple became engaged and tied the knot on October 11, 2003. Around the same time, Tina obtained her diving certificate, while Gabe was already a qualified certified driver with significant experience. In fact, he had already completed an impressive 55 dives by the time he and Tina married.
This home video of a happy newlywed couple packing for their honeymoon in Australia is one of the last images of Tina Watson alive.
With their newfound love for diving, Gabe and Tina decided to plan a romantic getaway for their honeymoon. Their destination was the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, where they planned a diving adventure of a lifetime. Their dream was to dive into the notorious SS Yongala, a shipwreck that sank in 1911. However, a couple of details posed a challenge. Gabe had limited open ocean diving experience, while Tina had never dived in the ocean or below 9 meters.
Prosecutors began the trial this week by showing jurors this photo of Tina lying lifeless on the ocean floor. As shown in this Australian police reenactment video, the prosecution...
On October 22, 2004, at 10:30 p.m., Gabe and Tina embarked on a diving excursion at the site of the shipwreck. Tina soon became unconscious and sank to the bottom of the ocean. Gabe claimed he was overwhelmed by the strength of the current and the speed of Tina's descent and unable to hold on to her. In a desperate attempt to save her life, Gabe claimed that he immediately sought help from others.
And believes Watson killed his new bride by turning off her air supply on her scuba tank and then holding her in a bear hug while she suffocated.
Gabe alerted a dive instructor at the surface to what had happened. The instructor quickly sprang into action and searched for Tina in the water. 10 minutes after Tina went underwater, the instructor found her lifeless body. Despite 40 minutes of attempts to resuscitate her, Tina's fate was sealed. The medical examiner determined that she died from drowning.
The defense argues that scenario is impossible and that Tina's death is a tragic accident.
2 inexperienced divers and a perfect storm.
As the authorities began their investigation, evidence emerged that suggested Gabe might have played a role in Tina's death. The Queensland police discovered inconsistencies in Gabe's story and the official record of his actions stored by his dive computer. According to the prosecutors, they believe that Gabe turned off Tina's regulator, held her underwater, and then reversed his actions by turning the air back on when she passed him, allowing her to sink into the depths of the ocean.
And that she began to sink in the deep water. He says he signaled to her to inflate her buoyancy vest to help her stay afloat, but that she couldn't. He then took her hand and tried to pull her along.
Tina's father, devastated by his daughter's death, put forth his claims during the inquest. He alleged that Gabe had asked Tina right before the couple's marriage to increase her life insurance policy and make him the sole beneficiary. This revelation raised suspicions about Gabe's intentions and the motive behind Tina's murder.
Gabe, are you confident you'll walk out of here in the end? Come on.
Easy, guys. Half a world away from the scene of his alleged crime, Gabe Watson is facing justice again.
After an exhaustive investigation, the Queensland police determined that there was sufficient evidence to charge Gabe with the murder of his wife, Tina. On June 19, 2008, Gabe was officially charged with murder.
Defense says Gabe Watson is a victim too.
This is a tragic case, and what's even more tragic is the blame of Gabe that he has had to live with.
Gabe Watson has the support of his new wife.
In 2009, Gabe traveled to Australia to face trial, where he pleaded not guilty to the charge of manslaughter. However, he was found guilty and was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. Gabe's jail time was suspended after 1 year, leaving Tina's family outraged.
Something seriously wrong, and I thought, I don't know anything about how to get down there and get her and meet up safely.
After Gabe finished serving his sentence in Australia, prosecutors in Alabama charged him with murder and kidnapping. They claimed that they had evidence indicating that Gabe had planned to murder Tina while still residing in the United States. However, an Alabama judge ruled that the evidence was inadmissible, leading to Gabe's acquittal on February 23, 2012. Gabe was acquitted without the defense ever presenting their case. Gabe Watson's case of betrayal and tragedy shocked many. But the next story delves even deeper into the darkness of relationships. Elise Matsunaga, a woman whose crime involved a chilling act of violence against her own husband.
New docuseries, Elise Matsunaga, Once Upon a Crime, has managed to generate so much buzz. In 2012, the wealthy businessman Marcos Caetano Matsunaga, it was Elise who was responsible. In the years that followed, the slaying of Matsunaga became one of Brazil's most sensationalized and debated cases, particularly Elise's murder trial.
In May 2012, Elise returned home from a trip with her aunt to find that she had some bad news awaiting her. While she was away, she hired a private investigator to follow around Marcos, her husband, and gather evidence that he had cheated on her. Unfortunately, her suspicions were confirmed by the investigator's findings.
Not only that, but the documentary offers an unprecedented insight into the mind of a convicted killer whose guilt is never in doubt and who looks back on the tragic circumstances.
Faced with the reality that her husband had been involved in extramarital affairs, Elise decided to take matters into her own hands. During a dinner at home, she confronted Marcos about his infidelity, igniting a fiery exchange between the two. According to Elise, Marcos told her that he was leaving her and taking their children while also threatening to put her in a psychiatric hospital.
For the consequences until this day. Once Upon a Crime's extended interviews with Elise give the series the feeling of a confessional, that the killer is being honest about their crimes.
During the argument, Elise reached for one of the couple's hunting guns stored in the house. In a panic, she aimed the weapon at Marcos and pulled the trigger, killing him instantly. Following the shooting, Elise reported her husband missing to local law enforcement. She portrayed herself as a grief-stricken wife, desperately searching for answers. But little did they know Elise was hiding a dark secret.
However, not everyone is convinced. The set piece that has ensured Once Upon a Crime turns heads is, of course, the interview with Elise herself.
As the investigation progressed, Elise's guilt began to take its toll. Unable to bear the weight of her actions any longer, she confessed to murdering her husband. During Elise's trial, the prosecution alleged that Elise had plotted and executed a murder of passion. fueled by her anger towards Marcos' alleged infidelity.
which took place in 2019 during an unsupervised furlough from her prison sentence, a right all Brazilian prisoners have, according to The Independent.
However, Elise's defense attorneys presented a different story. They argued that she had acted in self-defense, claiming that Marcos posed a threat to her life. After months of intense legal proceedings, the jury found Elise guilty of acting in self-defense. However, they also determined that her actions had crossed the threshold of the law. The judge sentenced her to 19 years and 1 month in prison.
Her argues that the series effectively absolves the killer of blame, and thus, in light of court findings, is fundamentally flawed in its approach.
Elise's time behind bars was not without hope. In 2019, her sentence was reduced by another year and 9 months. This reduction in sentence was attributed to her good behavior and progress in rehabilitation. Just 2 years later, her sentence was reduced once again, leaving her with a final sentence of 16 years and 3 months. Despite her confinement, Elise is not completely cut off from the outside world. She has been granted permission to spend 1 week each month outside of prison walls. Elise Matsunaga's shocking act of violence against her husband revealed the dark side of a fractured relationship. But the next case tells a story of heartbreak and despair. Kiana Burns, a woman whose tragic actions stunned those who knew her.
Company and drove 18-wheelers. He previously worked at Frito-Lay. And 36-year-old Catherine Price worked at Robins Air Force Base for the 116th Air Control Wing.
Kiana Burns was a woman who everyone thought had it all. She appeared to be a loving wife, mother, and influencer. However, what was going on behind closed doors would shock the residents of Sandy Springs.
Ernell and Kiana Burns are entrepreneurs from Atlanta. The married couple are...
On November 26, 2021, the peaceful suburban town of Sandy Springs, Georgia, was shaken to its core when 2 gunshots echoed through a quiet neighborhood. When police arrived at the Burns residence, they discovered a shocking crime scene. Kiana Burns, a popular influencer, shot her husband Ronell before turning the gun on herself.
Kiana Burns. Kiana Burns is an insurance agent and owner of Critique Designs Beauty and Barber.
In the weeks before the tragic incident, there were signs that trouble was brewing in the Burns marriage. Just 2 weeks before the shooting, Kiana shocked her followers by taking to Facebook Live to address significant changes in her life. With over 16,000 followers on Instagram and nearly 5,000 Facebook friends, Kiana's fans wondered what was going on in her marriage.
Inspirational quotes and preaches motivation to her followers.
Kiana revealed that she and her husband, along with 5 of their 8 children, had relocated to the Atlanta area to expand their businesses. She explained that she and her husband were co-owners of For His Glory Ministries, Critique Designs Beauty and Barber Salon, and Primerica Insurance. In the Facebook Live video, Kiana shed light on her emotional state, expressing her need for emotional support.
10-year-old Caleb Miles says his mom woke him up Tuesday morning saying she had to rush to his uncle's house, so he went along.
So I got there, I seen all the police and stuff, and I'm just like, what?
Only hours before the tragedy occurred, Kiana posted a video of herself singing and dancing with her child. Luckily, at the time of the shooting, the child was safely in the care of their grandparents. When the news of Kiana and Ronell's deaths spread throughout the Atlanta area, their friends and family were shell-shocked. Those around them celebrated their selflessness, love, and care for one another. One close friend expressed disbelief on Facebook, stating that the couple's wealth had not altered their down-to-earth and humble nature.
It's Air Force Base for the 116th Air Control Wing. Family members say the couple has been married for 11 years. They have 3 children and were members of Fellowship Bible Baptist Church.
8 years before the tragic events unfolded, Ronell Burns appeared on the popular television show Divorce Court. Back then, he was in the middle of a contentious divorce from his first wife. During the episode, Ronell accused his ex-wife of cheating, alleging that she had engaged in illicit affairs while he was away on business trips. However, the ex-wife refuted these claims, alleging that Ronell was the unfaithful one. Kiana Burns' tragic story of despair and heartbreak left a lasting impact, but the next case takes us to a calculated act of betrayal. Christopher Vaughn, a man whose actions led to the loss of his entire family in a shocking and deliberate crime.
15 years after his wife and 3 children were all killed in Oswego, Christopher Vaughn is trying to clear his name. He was convicted of the murders.
3 children, Abigail 12, Cassandra 11, and Blake 8, were found dead in the rear passenger seat of the family's SUV, each shot twice. 1 gunshot to the torso.
Christopher Vaughn, a hard-working husband and father, and his wife Kimberly were living the perfect suburban life in Seattle, Washington. However, in 2005, their lives took a turn when Christopher was offered a job at a computer forensic company in Illinois. With the promise of a new start, the Vaughn family decided to leave behind their familiar surroundings and move to Oswego, a suburb of Springfield.
When she asked her husband, so the narrative went, to pull over because she wasn't feeling well. Christopher Vaughn was found by a motorist walking along the frontage road.
On a seemingly ordinary day in 2007, the Vaughn family decided to spend their Saturday at a water park in the nearby town of Springfield. At around 5:15 a.m., near the city of Joliet, passers-by noticed Christopher limping along the side of the road. Christopher revealed shocking information when the driver stopped to ask about his condition. He believed that his wife Kimberly had shot him.
Furthermore, a forensic pathologist deposed by the prosecution, but not called to trial, described her fatal gunshot as being self-inflicted.
The police made their way to the scene. Upon their arrival, they discovered a horrific sight. Inside the family car, they found the bodies of Kimberly and their 3 children. Abigail, Cassandra, and Blake were all found shot dead, their bodies riddled with multiple gunshot wounds. Each child had been shot twice, while Kimberly had suffered a single gunshot wound to her under her chin. At Kimberly's feet, investigators discovered a 9mm gun, which belonged to Christopher.
Dr. Phil Show, right here on News Channel 20, starting today.
Christopher Vaughn and his family were driving from Oswego to Knights Action Park here in Springfield.
As the investigation unfolded, detectives wasted no time questioning Christopher, eager to gain insight into that morning's events. At the crime scene, Christopher initially told investigators that his wife, Kimberly, was the shooter. However, the story quickly took a twist, as Christopher's statements at the hospital seemed inconsistent during questioning. Now, instead of implicating Kimberly, Christopher claimed that he had no recollection of the events that took place in the car that morning.
More than a decade ago, Christopher Vaughn told police he didn't remember anything, which Clutter says is likely dissociative amnesia, but he recently started remembering.
After being treated at the hospital and discharged, the detectives brought Christopher back to the police station for further questioning. This marathon interview session lasted nearly 15 hours, as the detectives aimed to get to the bottom of the case. Throughout the interview, Christopher maintained his innocence, stating that he had no recollection of being shot. His account was that he had just remembered his leg bleeding.
The attorney representing Pierre and Gail Vaughn. They're the parents of this man, Christopher Vaughn, who has been convicted of killing his wife and 3 children on June 14, 2007.
At the end of the interview, Christopher was released. He returned for an additional interview on 2 occasions, providing further details and clarification to the detectives. In one of these interviews, Christopher told investigators that while driving to the water park with Kimberly, she asked him to pull over to the side as she was feeling sick. According to Christopher, Kimberly often experienced nausea due to migraine medication, which he claimed was the reason for the stop.
Now the prosecution is stating part of the DNA evidence submitted before a grand jury was fraudulent. Altman alleges the Illinois State forensic scientist, quote,
"Despite Christopher's compelling story, the detectives felt they had enough evidence to charge him with 4 counts of first-degree murder in the death of his family." The prosecutors, seeking the ultimate punishment, wanted to seek the death penalty against Christopher. However, when Christopher was incarcerated awaiting trial, the governor of Illinois abolished the death penalty in 2011.
Altman's complaint claims Kimberly Vaughn, Christopher's wife, was listed as a suspect. The final submission only listed Christopher as the suspect.
During Christopher's 2012 trial, the prosecution presented its case to the jury. They argued that Christopher's version of events did not match the forensic evidence. The prosecution alleged that Christopher had carefully planned and executed the murder of his family, motivated by his desire to live off the grid in the Canadian wilderness.
Altman tells me he's requesting the court remove draft from the July 3rd, 2007 lab report and add Kimberly Vaughn back as a suspect.
According to the prosecution, in the months before the murders, Christopher contacted a person who lived in Ottawa and inquired about camping in the woods. This, they claimed, was a clear indication of Christopher's intention to abandon his responsibilities and seek solitude in the wilderness. The prosecution presented a compelling argument, painting a picture of a troubled individual who grew frustrated with his wife and sought to escape his domestic life. They alleged that Christopher's dissatisfaction with his marriage drove him to commit the ultimate act of violence.
25-page lawsuit filed today alleges the Illinois State forensic scientist on the case tampered with lab reports against Vaughn.
The prosecution presented evidence at Christopher's trial that revealed he had traveled to the Yukon Territory in May 2007, just weeks before the murders. During Christopher's trial, 2 dancers came forward with startling revelations. One woman stated that Christopher had visited the club they worked at on multiple occasions, expressing his desire to leave his wife and start a new life in Canada. Then the other woman testified that Christopher had confided in her, claiming he was not married and had no children.
We think that the indictment was obtained through false testimony.
What's more, Kimberly Vaughn at the time was taking the prescribed drug Topamax for migraines.
Despite the prosecution's damning evidence, Christopher's defense team presented a compelling argument that painted a different picture. They argued that Kimberly, deeply troubled due to her marital issues, took her own life after killing her children and wounding her husband. One of the key pieces of evidence presented in defense of Christopher was a forensic pathologist's testimony.
Suicidal ideation and unusual behavior in some patients. Just 1 week before that June day in 2007, Kimberly reportedly had told her doctor.
The expert stated that at the time of the shootings, Kimberly was taking medications that were known to increase suicidal and homicidal thoughts. Furthermore, the medicines were accompanied by side effects that included confusion and agitation. This testimony played a pivotal role in the defense's case, as it provided an alternative explanation for the events.
One shot was to your left wrist.
The private eye says he thinks that reconstruction proved it wasn't Vaughn who fired the shots, but his wife. And there's the problem.
In the end, the jurors returned with a guilty verdict. Christopher was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences, the harshest sentence possible. While behind bars, Christopher continued to assert his innocence and sought justice through the legal system. Eventually, a wrongful conviction group dedicated to uncovering the truth took up Christopher's cause. The group has argued that crucial evidence was overlooked, leading to the wrong verdict. Christopher Vaughn's calculated actions against his own family revealed a shocking betrayal, but the next case uncovers another chilling narrative.
Cheers! In 2020, Andre Rebello was a 24-year-old cryptocurrency trader living with his then-partner, popular model and social media.
In 2020, Andre Rebello, a prominent cryptocurrency investor, found himself at the center of a murder case that captivated the media and the public. It all began when the body of Andre's mother was discovered at her home in Bicton, Perth, Australia. The circumstances surrounding her death raised numerous questions, and Andre found himself facing multiple charges, including murder.
4 fraud charges, which related to instances where he tried to recover the insurance money, including forging his mother's last will and testament.
During the trial, which took place in November 2024, the prosecution presented a compelling argument suggesting that Andre's motive for the murder was not as innocent as he had claimed. They alleged that the real reason he was at his mother's house on April 25, 2020, several hours before her body was found, was to carry out a sinister deed. According to the prosecution, Andre intended to take advantage of his mother's life insurance policy and reap the financial benefits. To support this claim, the prosecution presented evidence that Andre had led an expensive lifestyle, which required him to keep up appearances on social media. They argued that Andre's need for financial backing led him to commit the heinous crime. Andre, for his part, admitted to fraud charges related to his efforts to claim insurance, but vehemently denied the charge of murder. Andre claimed that he and his mother were discussing life insurance on the morning she was tragically killed. According to Andre, this conversation was merely a hypothetical scenario, and there was no intention to defraud anyone. As the trial progressed, the courtroom was witness to a clash of narratives and conflicting evidence. The prosecution painted a picture of a cunning and calculating son who murdered his own mother to secure his financial future. On the other hand, Andre's defense team argued that their client was innocent and was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Instagram star and model Grace Piscopo broke his silence after being accused of his partner mother. Andre Rebello was.
However, the prosecutor argued that the case was not as simple as it appeared. According to the prosecution, the sole motive for Andre's visit to his mother's home on April 25th was to take her life. They presented evidence to back up this claim, including testimony from Grace Piscopo, a social media influencer who had been in a relationship with Andre in 2020 when he was arrested.
Was detained after his mother was found in a Perth house in 2020. Watch the video above. Detectives talk about Andre Rebello's.
But before Grace took the witness stand, the prosecution presented crucial evidence in the form of cell phone records from Andre's phone. These records show that Grace attempted to contact Andre over 10 times between 11:10 a.m. and 11:35 a.m., sending several texts and begging him to answer his phone. The prosecution alleged that this was the time when Andre killed his mother. However, Grace testified that Andre typically left his phone on silent, which frustrated her when she couldn't reach him.
Cryptocurrency trader living with his then-partner, popular model and social media influencer Grace Piscopo, and their 18-month-old child.
During cross-examination, Grace rejected the prosecutor's allegation that she was trying to protect Andre. She maintained that she had reached out to him because she genuinely cared about his well-being. However, the prosecution argued that her desperate attempts to reach Andre backed up her claims that he was involved in his mother's murder. Andre's fate hangs in the balance as the trial winds to a close. The reaction to Rebello's situation has been a mix of shock and disbelief. Many are struggling to understand how someone who seemingly has it all could be involved in such a heinous crime. To the public, the mere fact that a person with so much going for them could allegedly commit such a heinous act has left many questioning the very nature of humanity. Media coverage of the case has also played a role in shaping the public's perception of Andre Rebello, as the constant coverage of the investigation contributed to the dissemination of information and fueled the public's curiosity. This constant exposure has created a strong emotional response as people try to make sense of the situation. Andre Rebello's alleged murder of his mother shocked Australia. However, Nathaniel Huey Jr.'s case is nothing short of heinous, one that will leave you questioning the depths of human depravity.
It started here on this Romeoville block September 17th, 2023, as a wellness check. Alberto Rolón, Zoraida Bartolome, their two boys, ages 7 and 9, lived in the home.
In September 2023, a tragic incident unfolded. Nathaniel Huey Jr., a 26-year-old individual, lost his life in a car crash during a high-speed police chase. What made this pursuit even more tragic was the fact that Huey Jr. was the prime suspect in a triple murder that had shaken the community. The victims, Zoraida Bartolome, Alberto Rolón, and their two sons, Adriel and Diego, along with their two dogs, were all senselessly killed. In the aftermath of these heinous crimes, loved ones of the victims set up a GoFundMe page to express their grief and pay tribute to the lost souls.
Well-being check, but they were all dead. Zoraida Bartolome, Alberto Rolón, and their two young sons, Adriel and Diego.
Zoraida and Alberto were described as hardworking people who dedicated their lives to providing for their families. Their sons, Adriel and Diego, were described as the sweetest and most innocent angels who could hug anyone's worries away. The page expressed that the world would be much darker without these four.
Palomo and her fiancé, Nathaniel Huey Jr. Police say to extinguish a love affair between Huey and the married Bartolome. According to these crime records obtained tonight by the I-Team,
once Nathaniel Huey Jr. was identified as the prime suspect in the murders, the police issued an alert to nearby agencies, warning their fellow officers that Huey Jr. had extensive firearm training. This information further intensified the search for Huey Jr., as authorities recognized the potential threat he posed.
It looked like she was being held against the roof.
A new report from Romeoville police obtained by NBC5 News paints a much different picture. So who was Ermelinda Palomo, and why was that Romeoville family...
Several days later, in Catoosa, police spotted Nathaniel Huey Jr. driving a car and attempted to pull him over. However, Nathaniel Huey Jr. sped off instead of stopping, leading to a chase on Interstate 44. During the chase, Nathaniel lost control of his vehicle and crashed. The car caught fire, engulfing it in flames.
Armed and dangerous murder suspect. Out of where? Illinois, I think.
An Oklahoma officer on scene tries to piece together who they were.
She's the missing person, endangered. He's the murderer.
Officers who were present at the scene of the crash reported that they had heard 2 gunshots before the incident. Upon approaching the vehicle, they discovered a woman inside. The woman, identified as Ermelinda Palomo, sustained a gunshot wound. Emergency personnel rushed Ermelinda to the hospital, but she succumbed to her injuries upon arrival.
Suspect.
Another isn't so sure.
It looked like she was being held against the roof.
A new report from Romeoville police obtained by NBC5 News paints a much different picture.
Inside the burning car, police found Nathaniel Huey Jr., also dead from a gunshot wound. According to Ermelinda's family, Ermelinda was Nathaniel Huey Jr.'s fiancée. She was also a mother of 5 and had 5 grandchildren. The family stated that Ermelinda had made strange statements that made it seem as though she would never return home the last time they had seen her.
But an investigation revealed a year of manipulation and deceit. Police say Palomo was aware of the affair Nathaniel was having with Zoraida. They say investigators analyzed iCloud backup records.
Initially, the police couldn't wrap their heads around why Nathaniel Huey Jr. would have committed such a heinous crime. Why would a seemingly normal man decide to commit such a horrific crime? But as time passed, a shocking revelation that would change everything came to light.
And found Palomo created multiple fake online profiles and phone numbers to communicate with Huey. He thought he was talking to members of a Mexican cartel that had ties to Palomo.
In October 2024, a report surfaced that Nathaniel Huey Jr. had been having an affair with his coworker, Zoraida. When his fiancée, Ermelinda, found out, she took matters into her own hands. Further investigation revealed that Ermelinda, Nathaniel's fiancée, was behind the tragic events that unfolded. She had apparently used fake social media accounts to catfish Nathaniel, convincing him he was part of a crime organization.
To committing the murders to a police informant because people were after him. The officer's report says there's no reason to believe Huey ever knew she was the one behind the account.
Ermelinda's elaborate plan involved creating a web of deceit and manipulation, ultimately leading to a tragic outcome. 2 days before the brutal murders of the Bartolome family, Ermelinda successfully managed to plant the seed of doubt in Nathaniel's mind. She convinced him his lover, Zoraida, was the real threat through her carefully crafted lies and manipulation. Nathaniel had no idea that it was Ermelinda playing a dangerous game behind the account.
And he likely died in Oklahoma without ever knowing that truth. Romeoville's police chief says nothing can justify a senseless act of violence, and this case unfortunately does not mean closure for so many continuing to grieve.
Nathaniel Huey Jr., driven by fear and paranoia, acted upon Ermelinda's twisted manipulations. On that fateful night, Ermelinda accompanied Nathaniel to the Bartolome home. While Nathaniel went inside, Ermelinda remained in the car, her sinister plan set in motion. Inside the Bartolome home, Nathaniel pulled out a 9mm pistol and opened fire on the family of 4 and their 2 dogs. The deaths of Nathaniel Huey Jr. and Ermelinda Palomo, before they could be arrested and face trial for their crimes, generated a sense of outrage and relief among the victims' families. On the one hand, they were deeply upset that justice would not be served in the usual manner. However, on the other hand, they felt a sense of relief knowing that they would not be subjected to a lengthy and distressing trial. Nathaniel Huey Jr.'s violent actions left a trail of devastation, but the next case unravels a sinister betrayal. David Swift, a man whose dark secrets and calculated moves turned a seemingly normal life into a tragic tale of deception and loss.
She was just a wonderful mother. She would do anything for her children. They were number one in her life. They came before anything else.
On October 30th, 2011, Karen Swift, a 44-year-old woman, vanished without a trace from her home in Dyersburg, Tennessee. The disappearance of Karen set off an alarm among the authorities and sparked a massive search effort. Karen's SUV was discovered abandoned nearby with a flat tire. This sparked suspicion, as no signs of forced entry or a struggle existed.
Do you feel like it is likely that the jury, on continued deliberations, will reach a verdict?
No, sir.
Karen Swift's husband, David, was questioned by the authorities and offered his assistance. However, his story painted a troubling picture of their marriage. According to David, he and Karen initially married in 1989. They had 2 sons together, but the marriage ended in divorce after David admitted to having an affair. Despite the separation, David claimed that he and Karen reunited and eventually remarried.
This is video of him coming out of that courtroom just minutes ago. When they found her body in December of 2011, that was 6 weeks after someone reported her missing.
This second marriage produced 2 daughters, but their marital troubles continued. When pressed by the detectives, David speculated that Karen may have been experiencing a midlife crisis. He claimed she had recently expressed dissatisfaction with her life and hinted at wanting to change.
It's now considered a cold case. As we've reported, the 44-year-old mother of 4 went missing after a Halloween party in 2011.
6 weeks after Karen went missing, her skeletal remains were discovered under a tree in the local graveyard. The forensic examination revealed she had died from blunt force trauma to the head. Karen's manner of death was ruled a homicide, triggering a desperate search for answers.
Now, talking to people off camera, they've remained quiet, wanting to keep Karen Swift's memory alive. Now, despite this new information in this autopsy report, many people say this is a tragic story.
The detectives focused their attention on Karen's husband, David Swift. They speculated that he killed her because she wanted to leave him again, but lacked sufficient evidence to implicate him in the crime. Despite conducting extensive searches and interviewing potential witnesses, no forensic evidence or witness statements directly linked David to Karen's murder.
To this day, it's unclear if she was sexually assaulted. According to the toxicology report, Swift had Benadryl, Tylenol, and caffeine in her system.
Over time, the investigation into Karen's murder went cold. David Swift moved out of state with his children and remarried. Despite the tragedy, he remained an involved father to his daughter, Ashley. According to Ashley, David continued to provide support and guidance after her mother's death.
Last month, David Swift was on trial for the murder of his wife, Karen Swift, in 2011. Karen Swift's body was found in a cemetery near Dyersburg.
However, new leads emerged after a cold case team reopened Karen's case. Detectives soon felt as if they had finally uncovered enough evidence to arrest David and charge him with her murder. In 2022, David Swift was arrested for murdering his wife, Karen.
But I'll be surprised if they ever try it again. A case of this age, and you can't even get them to agree on voluntary, I would be surprised if the defendant faces a trial again.
As the case unfolded in the courtroom, the fate of David hung in the balance. To the surprise of many, he was found not guilty of first and second-degree murder. Despite the initial acquittal, David's legal troubles were far from over. He is currently awaiting trial on manslaughter charges. David Swift's tale of betrayal and loss revealed the darkness behind his actions. But the next case takes a more violent turn. Colby Allen Parker, a man whose gruesome crimes shocked everyone who heard the details.
Questioned about the death, Colby Parker pulled the human ears from his pocket. CBS affiliate WPEC reports the Lake County Sheriff's Office responded to a home
in 2021. Authorities were called to a residence on reports of a stabbing. What they discovered there shook the community to its core. On the night in question, police officers arrived to find a chaotic situation. As they approached, they were greeted by a gruesome sight. Colby Allen Parker, a young man covered in blood, was frantically trying to explain what had happened.
In Central Florida Saturday night for reports of a man being attacked by his grandfather. According to deputies, Parker claims Wells pulled a knife on him. Parker managed.
As the police carefully approached the scene, they discovered the lifeless body of an older man. This body bore the chilling scars of multiple stab wounds. Further investigation revealed that the older man was Colby's grandfather.
Managed to get the knife away, then used it against Wells in what he called self-defense. Investigators say Parker admitted to cutting his grandfather multiple times.
While officers were examining the grandfather, another officer approached Colby for questioning. According to Colby, the tragic events that unfolded that night started when his grandfather attempted to hurt him. However, Colby managed to seize control of the situation and fatally stabbed his grandfather in the heart. However, the multiple stab wounds on the grandfather's body indicated that this was not a simple altercation.
Other than that, I don't know where Junior is. I asked and he didn't know. So, Junior? Yeah.
After Colby Allen Parker was arrested following a confrontation at the scene, investigators searched his residence where he had lived with his grandfather. During the search of the corner of a room, investigators discovered a disturbing piece of evidence, a bloody baseball bat. Just a few feet away, they found a butcher's knife. The blade was smeared with blood, still dripping onto the cold floor.
Where's Junior? Ronnie and Ronnie Jr. right here. Ronnie, okay, what is that?
Those are ears.
Further investigation led the police to charge Colby with second-degree murder and assaulting an officer. The severity of the charges further highlighted the severity of his actions. More details will be revealed as the case unfolds, shedding light on the chilling events in Colby's home. Colby Allen Parker's gruesome crime was horrifying, but the next case unveils a chilling story of rage and devastation. James Collar, a man whose uncontrollable anger led to a catastrophic act of violence against his own family.
The all-American family by friends and neighbors in Weatherford, Texas, a quiet bedroom community of Fort Worth.
They were something else in their little town.
James Collar, his wife Karen, and their 3 children, Emily, Lauren, and Sean, lived a seemingly happy life in Weatherford, Texas. Those around them described the Collars as the perfect family. They enjoyed spending time together, creating memories that would last a lifetime.
Of 2 beautiful teenage daughters, Emily and Lauren, and a toddler named Sean.
Emily was the firstborn, and she...
As the summer of 2008 approached, James was presented with an exciting opportunity. He was offered a job in the state of Missouri. James couldn't resist the chance to advance his career, so he made the difficult decision to leave Texas behind.
The Kaler family was living the dream. But Lynn says that although Craig and Karen appeared to be still in love after more than 20 years of marriage...
As James prepared to embark on a new life in Missouri, Karen approached him with a confession. She revealed that she had developed a romantic interest in a female coworker. To James's surprise, Karen requested a sexual relationship with her coworker. James allegedly consented to this arrangement, unaware of the consequences that lie ahead.
Met and fallen for at the gym where they both worked.
My theory is Karen was so beaten down for so long.
James believed that Karen's affair with her coworker would end by the time he relocated to Missouri. However, his hopes were shattered when he realized that the affair persisted. This betrayal deepened when James attended a New Year's Eve party in Texas, where he witnessed firsthand the blatant flirting between Karen and her coworker. The sight humiliated him, leaving him hurt and angry.
Are said to have become so inseparable that Karen told Craig about their affair. And her husband reportedly not only approved of it, but actually encouraged Karen to continue seeing Sonny.
After that night, Karen filed for divorce. In March 2009, Karen filed a battery complaint against her husband, James. This incident led to James's arrest and a turn of events that would forever change their lives. The media quickly caught wind of James's arrest, and the story became headline news.
Jealous, allegedly, that Craig took a new, even higher-paying government job in Columbia, Missouri, and moved Karen and their daughters into an even nicer home there just to get his wife away from his love rival, Sonny.
The case generated immense attention, and the fallout for James was swift and severe. He lost his job and found himself facing the consequences of his actions. Faced with the aftermath of James's arrest, Karen decided to move herself and her 3 children from the family home. They sought a fresh start in a new environment, away from the toxicity of the situation. Meanwhile, James went to live with his parents in Kansas.
Visiting her grandmother, 89-year-old Dorothy White, at her farm on Thanksgiving weekend.
During this time, James made it his mission to win Karen back. He worked tirelessly to repair the damage he had done, but to no avail. Frustrated and desperate, James decided to take drastic measures to humiliate Karen in public. He embarked on a campaign to destroy her public image and invade her privacy. James sought to expose Karen's secret and tarnish her reputation by hacking into her computer.
The grandmother calls her emergency alert service, saying a gunman has just burst into her home, firing at anything that moved.
On November 29, 2009, Karen, Emily, Lauren, and Sean made the fateful decision to visit Karen's grandmother, Dorothy White, at her house in Burlingame, Kansas. At around the same time, James Collar, armed with a deadly weapon, drove from Meridian to Burlingame. His destination? Dorothy White's home.
The alarmed operator can hear gunfire in the background.
James entered Dorothy's house at 6 p.m. Karen was in the kitchen with her son, Sean. Without hesitation, James raised his firearm and shot Karen, leaving her unconscious on the kitchen floor. In an instant, the house was filled with chaos.
She was on the floor, on her back. She didn't look like she was breathing or had a pulse.
As he continues through the house, Deputy Perling finds Emily also apparently dead in the living room.
As the echoes of the gunshots reverberated through the house, Sean ran for his life. In a stroke of luck, he managed to escape to a nearby neighbor's home. With a chilling determination, James made his way to the living room where Dorothy White and his teenage daughter Emily stood. James pulled the trigger, ending her life in cold blood. Lauren, James's other teenage daughter, was upstairs, unaware of the horrors unfolding downstairs. James ended her life too. Dorothy White's life alert bracelet, triggered by her unresponsive state, alerted emergency services. The police were summoned to the scene, where they arrived to find Karen, unconscious but alive, on the kitchen floor. Dorothy and Lauren were also alive, but just barely. They identified the shooter as James Collar.
44-year-old Karen had also been killed in a horrifying Thanksgiving holiday massacre. But 89-year-old grandmother Dorothy was still alive, as was Emily's younger sister Lauren, who was 16.
Emily was pronounced dead at the scene. Karen, Dorothy, and Lauren were rushed to the hospital, but their injuries were beyond saving. Despite the efforts of medical professionals, all 3 succumbed to their injuries, leaving behind a shattered family and a community in mourning.
As you, I'm sure, can well understand. And I messed up.
Keeler refuses to talk to detectives at the station about the day of his family's massacre.
James Collar was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. His defense team argued that he was not responsible for his actions due to mental illness. They presented psychiatric evaluations and testimony from expert witnesses to support their claim. The defense argued that James was suffering from severe depression, anxiety, and bipolar disorder, which impaired his judgment and led him to commit the crime. The prosecution, on the other hand, presented a strong case against James Collar. They argued that Collar planned and premeditated the murders, motivated by anger and revenge. Ultimately, the jury sided with the prosecution. The judge sentenced him to death. His legal team has filed multiple appeals, seeking to have his sentence commuted or overturned. However, he remains on death row. James Collar's devastating actions tore apart his family in an unthinkable act of violence. But the next case takes us to another heartbreaking tragedy.
My 2-week-old is not in her sleeper. Her passy is on the floor.
A mother's desperate 911 call from inside this Georgia home, 40 miles southeast of Atlanta.
She's not in her sleeper. She's not here. I've looked everywhere.
In October 2017, the small town of Newton County, Georgia was rocked by the tragic disappearance of 2-week-old Kalia McNabb. Kalia, who had been born prematurely on September 23rd and weighed only 5 pounds at birth, was reported missing on the morning of October 7th when her mother, Courtney Bell, called the Newton County Police Department to report her infant daughter missing from their trailer. This incident sent shockwaves through the community, as Kalia's disappearance quickly became a cause for concern.
15-day-old Kalia MacNeill, home just days ago from the hospital, is missing. The 911 operator keeps Kalia's mother, Courtney Bell, on the phone.
The search for Kalia was intensified. With the help of local volunteers, law enforcement, and canine units, authorities conducted an extensive search around the area where the family lived. However, on October 8th, one day after Kalia was reported missing, the search took an even more sinister turn. Search teams, who were diligently combing through the trailer park where the family resided, stumbled upon a shocking and tragic discovery. Kalia's body, wrapped in blue cloth and placed under a log in a wooded area just a quarter-mile away from her home, was found.
But I want my kid back, man. That's my child, man. I want my kid, man.
The next morning, in this wooded area adjacent to the family's mobile home park, searchers make a heartbreaking discovery.
As the investigation continued, authorities swiftly zeroed in on Christopher MacNeill, Kalia's father, as the primary suspect in the case. On October 17th, he was formally charged with a slew of offenses related to Kalia's death, including malice murder, felony murder, and concealing a death. Several months later, on January 1st, 2018, Courtney Bell, Kalia's mother, was also charged in the case. The charges against her included concealing a death, false statement, and tampering with evidence.
Now, more than a year and a half after their daughter's tragic death, mother and father are sitting side by side in court as the state of Georgia seeks justice for baby Kalia.
In 2019, Christopher MacNeill was convicted of 8 charges, including first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and tampering with evidence. During the sentencing hearing, Judge John M. Ott addressed Christopher directly and asked him what sentence he would impose upon the guilty party if he were innocent. Without hesitation, Christopher stated that the maximum sentence would be appropriate. To the shock of everyone in the courtroom, Judge John M. Ott decided to impose that very sentence on Christopher.
Then, 3 months after the murder, Kalia's mother, Courtney Bell.
Courtney Bell was also found guilty in relation to Kalia's death. While pleading guilty to the murder charge, Courtney acknowledged her substance addiction as a sickness and expressed her love for her babies. However, her remorseful words did little to mitigate her crime severity.
Is also in front of a judge answering for her alleged role in Kalia's death.
During her sentencing hearing, Courtney Bell expressed her regret and remorse for her actions. She claimed that she did her best to be a good mother despite her struggles with substance addiction. In 2023, the Georgia Supreme Court overturned Courtney's conviction, ruling that there was not enough evidence to support the jury's verdict.
Count 1, murder in the second degree. Count 2, cruelty to children in the second degree. And count 3, contributing to the deprivation of a minor felony.
The prosecution's theory revolved around the notion that Courtney was a bad mother for allowing Christopher MacNeill, the child's father, to live in the trailer with Kalia and the other children. They argued that Courtney's actions contributed to the neglectful environment that led to Kalia's passing. However, Courtney's attorneys refuted these claims, arguing that there was no evidence linking Courtney's conduct to her daughter's death.
What kind of drugs did you use? Weed. Weed. And then, okay. I've been clean for long. Yeah.
Courtney's attorneys argued that the prosecution relied on a flawed theory that painted her as a bad mother. They argued that there was no evidence to support the notion that Courtney's actions directly caused her daughter's death. The court ultimately determined that the prosecution failed to show any evidence linking Courtney's conduct to her daughter's death. Courtney Bell's sentence was overturned, and she was released after serving time in prison. However, Christopher MacNeill remains behind bars, facing the consequences of his actions. Christopher MacNeill's tragic crime left a community devastated, but the next case is just as chilling. Matthew Ponomarenko, a man whose violent actions towards his own family reveal a terrifying and senseless act of destruction.
Matthew Ponomarenko called 911, told a dispatcher he killed his son inside the family's living room. We've chosen not to air that call, but in it, the father says he beat his son to death with a baseball bat.
On March 25, 2021, a shocking incident unfolded in Parma, Ohio, when 34-year-old Matthew Ponomarenko called 911 and confessed to murdering his 5-year-old son, Jax. The dispatcher immediately dispatched officers to the scene, where they discovered a horrific crime scene inside Matthew's home.
From the Russell Avenue home of Matthew Ponomarenko chilled me to the bone. The caller, allegedly 31-year-old Ponomarenko, admits to beating to death with a baseball bat.
Upon arrival, police found Matthew standing in his front yard, seemingly unaffected by what he had just done. Inside the house, police officers found Jax's lifeless body, with multiple blunt force trauma injuries to his head and face. The devastating discovery left everyone in disbelief, and Matthew was arrested and charged with aggravated murder, kidnapping, and endangering children.
His 5-year-old son, Jax, but he wouldn't respond when the 911 operator asked him when or why. He'd only say he was hearing voices, but he didn't elaborate.
As investigators delved into the case, they discovered that Matthew had a history of putting his son Jax in danger. In 2017, Matthew pleaded no contest to a child endangerment case in which he left Jax in the middle of a road, yelled at people in the street, and admitted to using meth and PCP. Jax, Matthew's 5-year-old son, was autistic and nonverbal. He communicated through a tablet.
In 2019, Cuyahoga County conducted an investigation into, quote, parenting issues with the Ponomarenkos, but that case was subsequently closed.
After Jax's lifeless body was found in their home, investigators began their search for answers. What they found was shocking: evidence of mistreatment and torture. The crime scene revealed scenes of severe physical mistreatment, leaving no doubt that Jax had endured unimaginable suffering at the hands of his own father.
First, we'll go to a Zoom from County Jail, case number 658361, Matthew Ponomarenko.
Due to the severity of Matthew's crime, he was eligible for the death penalty if convicted. However, 2 years after confessing to murdering his son, Matthew pleaded guilty to aggravated murder, kidnapping, and endangering children. During the sentencing hearing, the prosecution, Michael O'Malley, presented chilling details of the events that unfolded on that fateful day. He told the court that Matthew brutally beat and killed his own son.
All right, we're going to take a break. Deputy, take him into the holding cell, please.
Matthew also had the opportunity to address the court, and his words left a mark on all who listened. In a somber tone, he said, "I'd like to say I'm sorry. It was a small gesture, but it offered little comfort to Jax's family, who had lost their loved one." The judge presiding over the case handed down a sentence that would serve as a reminder of the gravity of the crimes. Matthew was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 45 years before he would be eligible for parole. Matthew Ponomarenko's crime was horrifying, but the next case takes us to a shocking betrayal within a prominent family. Alex Murdaugh, a once respected lawyer whose web of lies and greed led to the brutal murders of his wife and son.
This is where Alec Murdaugh's life unraveled on June 7th, 2021.
This is your wife and son?
Richard Alexander Alex Murdaugh was a prominent attorney in South Carolina, known for his legal achievements and ties to the powerful and influential. However, behind the facade of wealth and status, whispers of secrets and scandals lurked beneath the surface. On July 8, 2015, 19-year-old nursing student Stephen Smith was found dead 15 miles from Murdaugh's estate in Moselle. His death was initially ruled a hit and run, but suspicions soon arose. As an openly gay man in a small southern town, Stephen's case quickly became the talk of the community.
The investigation revealed no answers as to what happened and who was responsible. It was an extremely tragic loss for his family.
As the investigation progressed, rumors began to circulate that Stephen had been in a romantic relationship with Buster, the older son of the Murdaugh family. This revelation sparked speculation about the possibility of a cover-up involving other members of the Murdaugh family. In the aftermath of Stephen's death, several witnesses were interviewed, and their statements raised even more questions. They alleged that Buster and Stephen had been in a romantic relationship, further fueling suspicions about the nature of the incident.
Then, all of a sudden, it became one of the stories linked to the Murdaughs and linked to the nation's obsession with justice.
With rumors swirling, many began to question whether the Murdaughs were covering up the truth to protect their reputation and maintain their grasp on power. As of November 2024, there have been no indictments or charges issued in the mysterious murder of Stephen Smith. Despite the ongoing investigation, Buster Murdaugh has publicly denied any involvement in the case, dismissing rumors of his alleged involvement.
She literally helped raise Alec Murdaugh's sons, Paul and Buster.
In 2018, the 57-year-old died after a fall at the Murdaugh estate.
On February 2, 2018, the family's longtime housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, passed away after suffering a severe head injury. Initially, the incident was labeled as a trip and fall, but no autopsy was performed on Gloria. However, in June 2021, the investigation into her tragic death was upgraded to a criminal investigation.
It was kind of a sad, touching moment when you see Mallory and her boyfriend. I think it's the last moment that anybody captured an image of her alive.
The youngest of the Murdaugh boys, Paul Murdaugh, found himself in hot water in February 2019. He was charged with 3 felonies after his friend Mallory Beach died in a boating accident. Paul, who was driving the boat, had a blood alcohol level of 0.286, 3 times over the legal limit.
County Deputy Sheriff Stephen Domino was one of the first on the scene. After Domino got Mallory's distraught boyfriend Anthony Cook into his patrol car.
According to Connor Cook, one of the teens on board the boat when Mallory Beach died, Alex Murdaugh had encouraged him to protect Paul during the investigation. This allegation sparked an inquiry by SLED, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, into whether the police had charged Paul in relation to Mallory's death due to pressure.
Maggie and Paul were murdered on Carlton County property in June of 2021. The 1,700-acre property was used as a hunting lodge for the family.
However, despite all the legal troubles that the Murdaugh family might have encountered, they're nothing compared to what happened on June 7, 2021. At 10:06 p.m., Alex Murdaugh called 911 from his cell, reporting that he had found his 22-year-old son Paul and 52-year-old wife Maggie near the dog kennels at the Murdaugh family hunting lodge in Islandton.
Investigators interviewed Murdaugh in a patrol car.
My boy over there, I could see it was.
When the police arrived at the scene, they found Paul and Maggie shot with at least 2 different weapons. They spoke to Alex at the scene, who claimed at the time of the shooting he had been visiting his ill mother. Yet, the detectives' investigation soon focused on Alex Murdaugh for the murders of his wife and son.
He was indicted on dozens more charges for defrauding clients out of millions of dollars. And then in July of 2022, more than a year after the grisly murders,
nearly 1 year after the devastating murders, Alex Murdaugh found himself at the center of a maelstrom of controversy and suspicion. The prosecution put forth a compelling argument, claiming Alex's motive for committing these heinous crimes was to distract from the various financial crimes that were about to come to light. It was alleged that Alex sought to garner public sympathy and divert attention away from his wrongdoings.
At the kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered.
I was.
Come here, Baba. Come here, Cash. Come here, Baba. Cash.
You continued lying after that night, did you not?
But once I lied, I continued to lie. Yes, sir.
On March 2, 2023, Alex Murdaugh stood trial for the murders of his wife, Maggie, and their son, Paul. After an extensive legal process, a jury found him guilty on both counts, handing down 2 consecutive life sentences. The verdict was met with mixed emotions, as some felt justice had been served, while others remained skeptical of the prosecution's claims.
The shooter's covered in blood. The shooter's gun is covered in blood. Common sense thing here is there were 2 shooters.
Alex Murdaugh appealed to the state Supreme Court despite his conviction. His fate currently remains in the hands of the highest court in South Carolina. While his sentence brings closure to the case, many questions remain unanswered. Alex Murdaugh's shocking betrayal of his own family left a trail of devastation, but the next case is just as haunting. Philip Snyder, a man whose violent actions, fueled by anger and obsession, led to a senseless and brutal crime.
Philip Snyder and his wife Roberta, known as Bobby, both in their 70s, lived here on St. Abigail Street until Bobby's brother finds out she's missing.
In a small town in Ohio, a disturbing case unfolded. Philip Snyder, a 73-year-old man, claims his wife Roberta died unexpectedly while they were on a road trip to Graceland. However, the details of this story raise suspicions and leave investigators questioning what really happened.
She choked on her phlegm. She'd been choking for about a year.
He says she died in this truck when they got to Memphis. Phil was taking Bobby, a lifelong Elvis Presley fan.
Initially, Philip told Roberta's loved ones they were traveling to Memphis when the tragedy occurred. He claimed that they flagged down a passing ambulance in a restaurant parking lot, and the ambulance took Roberta's body away. According to Philip, Roberta was subsequently cremated.
You remember the checkers, passing the checkers?
Yeah, I think it could have been checkers, maybe.
Police thumbed through his receipts looking for clues.
We're trying to find your wife.
However, the Hartford police in Ohio, where Philip and Roberta resided, began questioning Philip's claims. They contacted the authorities in Memphis, where Philip alleged Roberta had passed away, but no one could locate her body. Faced with mounting evidence, the detectives confronted Philip. Philip's initial story crumbles, and he changes his story. He now claims that Roberta died while they were in between Columbus and Cincinnati, while they were on their way to Memphis.
They move to the kitchen where Phil goes through Bobby's purse. He finds her license. That's the breaking point for Chief Larry Dordia.
Because Roberta wanted to be with nature and not on someone's shelf, Philip told the detectives he threw Roberta's body off a bridge on I-40 in Tennessee. However, when drivers and search teams scoured the area, they didn't find any sign of Roberta. With Philip's constantly changing narrative and the absence of Roberta's body, investigators are left searching for the truth. They work tirelessly to piece together the events leading up to Roberta's disappearance and death.
Oh my goodness, I feel so bad. Okay, so I feel so bad. Come on, buddy. I'm so sorry, you guys.
As the investigation into Roberta's disappearance continued, Philip attempted to take his own life. However, family members were able to intervene and save him. While Philip was in the hospital recovering from his attempted suicide, investigators descended on his and Roberta's home in Hartville.
Changes everything for her husband, Phil.
He is looking at a red bin.
There's no body here, but there's a very bad smell in this tote.
The canine hits on this red container.
He won't leave it.
Investigators were confident that they could find answers in the couple's home. Evidence was mounting against Philip, and detectives were determined to gather more evidence against him. Among the items searched in the house, cadaver dogs stumbled upon a piece of Roberta's sweater stained with human blood.
He came back to it 3 times.
Police find what looks like blood inside of it. Plastic bags with possible blood and the front of a sweatshirt cut out with Hartville, Ohio on it.
The DNA on the sweater matched Roberta's, confirming her connection to the bloodstain. This piece of evidence further strengthened the case against Philip. The detectives, already skeptical of his version of events, were even more convinced that he was responsible for Roberta's disappearance.
Police confront him with the new evidence.
I didn't cut the shirt. I didn't cut any shirt off.
Well, the science says that's not true.
The web of lies continue to frustrate investigators.
Determined to get to the bottom of the case, the detectives decided to pay a visit to Philip at the hospital. Once again, Philip changed his account and claimed that Roberta had died while at home in Hartville. According to Philip, he had disposed of her body in a trash bag and thrown it into the Tennessee River.
The Tennessee River in Benton County, 150 miles northeast of Memphis, turned up nothing.
You're guilty of something.
I'm not. I didn't kill my wife.
Still searching for the truth, police get creative.
However, the detectives didn't believe Philip's story. They realized he had previously been inconsistent in his statements and suspected he was trying to cover his tracks. Determined to get to the bottom of the case, the detectives devised a cunning plan. The detectives recruited a 50-year-old undercover officer from the Hartville police force. This undercover operative, a woman, would approach Philip under the guise of friendship and gain his trust.
Walks into the Burger King in Hartville.
Now, do they have good coffee here? Really?
She strikes up a conversation with Phil.
Hey, I just got divorced in Cincinnati. I got 2 grown kids.
Over the next few weeks, the undercover officer began meeting with Philip for coffee on a daily basis. They shared stories about their personal lives, and the officer even confided in him about her dying mother, who was supposedly suffering in hospice. She even went so far as to express her desire for her mother to pass already, and even considered ending her life.
Recording everything on a hidden camera. She starts showing up at Burger King at 6 a.m. when Phil and his friends meet for coffee every day.
We have assigned seats here.
You do, don't you?
As the officer continued to persist with her emotional tactics, the pressure mounted on Philip. The constant reminders of his wife's death and the undercover officer's feigned vulnerability became too much for him to bear. Finally, Philip confessed the truth behind Roberta's disappearance.
Phil starts to talk about how Bobby died. This time, he says she was asleep on the couch, fell off and hit her head, and she landed on a plastic tarp on the floor she had out for arts and crafts.
On January 2nd, 2017, Roberta and Philip were involved in a heated argument. The argument escalated, and Roberta made the decision to go to bed while sitting on a love seat. The following morning, Philip woke up and went downstairs for coffee. On his return, he reportedly discovered that Roberta was still asleep. In a chilling twist, Philip grabbed a drop cloth and placed it over Roberta's head. He then took a 2-pound steak hammer and struck her repeatedly in the head.
He pleaded guilty to murdering his wife of 53 years, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. As part of the deal, he had to tell police where they can find Bobby's body.
After committing the murder, Philip decided to dispose of Roberta's body. He wrapped a plastic bag around her head. rolled her body in a strap, and placed her in a plastic container. Philip then drove with her remains, disposing of her in various places between Ohio and Tennessee. In August 2018, Philip pleaded guilty to aggravated murder, tampering with evidence, and gross abuse of a corpse. The judge sentenced him to life in prison with parole eligibility after 20 years. Philip Snyder's violent crime was a terrifying act of rage, but the next case is just as unsettling. Carl Carlson, a man whose cold and calculated actions led to a senseless tragedy
that had actually happened to Carl Carlson before. Back in 1991, Carl's first wife, Christina, Levi's mother, also died in a tragic accident.
On New Year's Day 1991, firefighters responded to a fire at Carl and Christina Carlson's home in Murphy's, California. The call came in around 2:30 p.m., and the first responders arrived on the scene to find Carl standing outside, covered in soot and burns. Carl informed them that he had successfully rescued his 3 children from the blaze, but unfortunately, his wife Christina was still trapped inside.
In a tragic accident, a house fire.
Looks good, you guys.
Carl and Christina were living here in Murphy's, California, with their 3 young children, says her sister Colette.
Firefighters entered the burning structure with the sole purpose of finding Christina. Their search led them to the bathroom, where they made the devastating discovery of her body. Christina had been tragically trapped in the bathroom, unable to escape the flames that had engulfed the room.
Carlson had taken out a $200,000 life insurance policy on his wife.
That doesn't sound like a lot by today's standards, but in 1991, it was a lot of money.
The investigation into the fire began immediately, with a team of fire investigators working tirelessly to determine the cause of the blaze. Their initial findings pointed towards a fire that had originated outside the bathroom, where Christina had been bathing, and Carl was working in the garage. This theory led investigators to believe Christina had been unaware and helpless in the face of the fire's relentless advance.
When I found out that it was boarded, I just was in shock.
Carlson told investigators the pane had broken, so he temporarily covered the window to keep the cold out.
However, there were several things at the scene that raised suspicion. The window in the bathroom where Christina was killed was boarded up, causing investigators to question Carl's version of events. Carl offered an explanation for the missing window pane. He claimed that they could not afford to put in a pane.
Carlson told police that Christina was in the bathroom when some kerosene that had spilled suddenly erupted in flames.
Additionally, the odor of kerosene was prominent in the home, leading investigators to question why the fuel scent was so overpowering. Once again, Carl seemed to have an explanation for this. He claimed that he accidentally spilled a container of kerosene while attempting to heat the home days earlier, and it somehow fit into the rug.
Was finally having suspicions of her own, according to police. One big reason? Police say she'd found out Carl had recently taken...
As the investigators were still piecing together the events surrounding Christina's death and the fire, it came as a surprise when Carl suddenly moved to Seneca, New York, with his daughters Erin and Katie and son Levi. This decision raised even more suspicions among Christina's family, as they firmly believe Carl had a hand in her demise. However, the official manner of death for Christina was ruled as an accident in March 1991.
A $1.2 million life insurance policy on her, although Carlson later denied it. She agreed to wear a wire, pretending to Carl.
This ruling left Christina's family feeling frustrated and disillusioned. They knew in their hearts that something more sinister was at play, but their attempts to bring the truth to light fell short. The insurance company, which was the beneficiary of Christina's life insurance policy, paid a hefty sum of over $215,000 to Carl after the manner of death was concluded.
While he was underneath it, the truck slipped off the jacks that were holding it up.
Okay, we're going to start CPR, okay?
Yeah, Carl, they want to start CPR. Do you know CPR?
For Carl, it appeared he had moved on with his life. He settled on a farm and married Cindy Best. It seemed that tragedy had finally passed by the Carlson family. However, on November 20th, 2008, Cindy called 911, informing the dispatcher that a truck had fallen off the jack and that her 23-year-old stepson Levi was stuck underneath, not breathing.
It was all ruled a tragic accident, a once-in-a-lifetime tragedy.
When the police and the paramedics arrived at the scene, it became evident that Levi was already dead. The tragedy had struck the Carlson family once again, leaving everyone in disbelief and grief. According to Carl, Levi had been crushed under the weight of the vehicle, which weighed half a ton.
But then in 2012, another member of the family contacted the New York police. That's when Lieutenant Investigator John Clear got involved for the first time and started checking out.
However, as the story unfolded, suspicions began to grow. The detectives investigating the death soon learned that Carl had taken out life insurance policies on both Christine, his deceased first wife, and Levi just days before their passing. Even more suspicious was the fact that Carl was the beneficiary of both policies.
Now living apart from Carlson, was finally having suspicions of her own, according to police. One big reason? Police say she'd found out Carl.
4 years later, in 2012, the case took an unexpected turn. The detectives made contact with Cindy, Carl's estranged wife, who provided them with crucial information. Cindy revealed that there were discrepancies in Carl's version of events, with the evidence stacking up against Carl. The detectives decided to reopen Levi's death investigation. They began piecing together the clues, unraveling a web of deceit that pointed directly to Carlson as the prime suspect.
Exclusive, you're about to hear part of that conversation for the first time.
Can you just tell me how things went that day so that I know in my head?
In an exclusive interview with the detectives, Cindy painted a disturbing picture of Carl's abusive and controlling behavior. She described him as a narcissistic man who exerted total control over all aspects of her life. Determined to uncover the truth, Cindy decided to take a bold step and wore a wire, allowing her to record conversations about Carl and Levi's death.
If you pushed the truck and you said yes.
I didn't push the truck, I said I had nothing to do, but I said I took advantage of the situation once it happened.
As Cindy spoke to Carl and gathered evidence, she expected a confession. However, to her disappointment, Carl remained steadfast in his denial. Cindy's efforts were not in vain despite the lack of a confession. During the conversation, Carl made a statement that seemed to incriminate himself. This crucial piece of information would pave the way for his eventual arrest.
Please bring Carlson in for questioning.
So, the reason that they brought you in today to finally talk to you was really over
my son, Levi.
Under intense questioning, Carl's story took a surprising turn. He now claimed that he accidentally dropped the truck on his son Levi, leaving him unconscious. Panicked, Carl fled the scene and called 911 when he returned. However, his story did not add up, and there were inconsistencies in his account. As the pressure mounted, Carl's narrative continued to change, leaving detectives suspicious about his true role in Levi's tragic death.
His lawyer, speaking on his behalf, says he respectfully disagrees with the court's recent decision to allow the jury to hear the recorded conversations Carl Carlson had with his wife.
Carl Carlson was charged with second-degree murder in the death of his son. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Carl eventually pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. It was a bittersweet victory for investigators, knowing that justice had been served, but mourning the loss of an innocent life.
Her office is now actively investigating the death as a homicide and cannot comment on an active investigation. But now, even with Carl Carlson in jail awaiting trial,
as the case progressed, detectives turned their sights on Carl's deceased wife, Christina. The circumstances surrounding her death had always seemed suspicious, and new evidence began to surface that implicated Carl. After a thorough investigation, it was concluded that Carl had murdered Christina as well.
Carl Carlson knew his sentence would be 15 to life as he was brought to the Seneca County Courthouse in Waterloo. His family knew it too, and several relatives, including one of his brothers, told us they were let down.
In 2020, Carl's trial for the murder of his wife began. The jury found Carl guilty of first-degree murder, mirroring his prior conviction for his son's murder. Carl's sentence was swift and final: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Carl Carlson's calculated betrayal was chilling, but the next case reveals an even darker tragedy. Chris Watts, a man whose seemingly perfect family life concealed a horrifying secret.
She was such a good person and such a good wife to him.
He is amazing. I can't tell you how wonderful he is.
How could he have done something like that to her?
The Watts family, consisting of Chris and Shannon Watts and their two daughters, Bella and Celeste, commonly known as Cece, captivated social media with their seemingly perfect lives. Their picture-perfect portrayal of a happily married couple presented an idealized reality. However, behind closed doors, a different story was unfolding that would shock the world.
Oh, look at this.
She just was a ball of love. I don't know. It sounds like too good to be true, but
I know, but it really was.
She really, yeah.
In 2018, Shannon had exciting news to share with her husband. She informed him she was pregnant with their third child, a boy. To support his family, Chris had a successful career at Anadarko Petroleum, working as a petroleum engineer. On the other hand, Shannon took on the role of a stay-at-home mother, managing the family and caring for their two young daughters. However, she had also become involved in the MLM industry, selling a product called Thrive for a company called Lavelle.
That is what a really good friend does. A really good friend knows something's wrong and does that.
She got there and there was no answer, so I texted Chris.
On August 13, 2018, the world was shaken by the tragic disappearance of Shannon Watts and her daughters Bella and Cece. In the hours following Shannon's disappearance, Chris acted unemotionally, not worried, and lackadaisical. He seemed unaffected by the situation, leading many to believe he had something to hide. This lack of concern and urgency raised suspicions and fueled speculation among investigators and family members.
This is him at 517.
We can see the garage door open. There's some kind of movement that can be seen.
Out there on the side, like get everything but in.
However, things started to change when Chris's neighbor approached the police with security camera footage, showing Chris leaving and re-entering his house and car several times the night before. The footage raised suspicions as it seemed to contradict Chris's claims that he had spent the entire evening at work.
Watching his reaction when everybody is watching this and then turn and look at him, his demeanor changes almost immediately.
Upon viewing the security camera footage, Chris became visibly nervous. The calm and unbothered demeanor he had maintained up until that point vanished. Instead, he displayed signs of nervousness, fidgeting, and stammering while answering questions from the police.
Police looking for a pregnant Frederick woman and her 2 children who have seemingly vanished without a trace.
Denver 7's Thomas Hoppe spoke with the woman's husband.
Did you guys get into an argument before she left?
When the detectives investigating Shannon, Bella, and Cece's disappearance questioned Chris Watts, he said he was unaware of their whereabouts. In a heartfelt plea to the media outlets, Chris begged for Shannon and the girls to come home. However, 2 days after their families were reported missing, Chris failed a polygraph examination regarding his wife and daughter's disappearance.
To make them vanish.
You have not shed one tear in 2 days that you've been here.
No.
Not one.
After speaking with his father, Chris confessed to the detectives that his wife, Shannon, had killed their daughters in a fit of rage. According to Chris, he had killed Shannon in a fit of anger because he was so upset. However, it later came to light that Chris actually murdered Shannon in cold blood before smothering his 2 daughters, Bella and Cece. Chris then proceeded to dispose of all 3 bodies by driving them to his worksite and leaving them in crude oil vats. This act not only demonstrated a disregard for human life, but also revealed a chilling level of planning and premeditation.
From father and husband to triple murder suspect. Arrested overnight, Chris Watts is accused of killing his pregnant wife Shanann and their 2 daughters.
On August 21, 2018, Chris Watts was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and a slew of other charges. 3 months later, on November 6th, Chris pleaded guilty to the charges against him. He was sentenced to 5 life sentences without parole and an additional 48 years because Shannon was pregnant at the time of her death. Furthermore, Chris received 36 years for tampering with deceased bodies.
The defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives. Not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner.
Disgustingly, while incarcerated, Chris has gathered a following of lonely women who have written to him, expressing admiration despite his heinous crimes. Chris even has the audacity to make allegations from behind bars, blaming Shannon for everything that occurred and labeling her as a control freak. Unlike Chris Watts, who committed a heinous crime by murdering his family in cold blood, Colby Allen Parker committed an even more disturbing act when he killed and mutilated his grandfather in a horrific incident.
A Florida man is charged with killing his 77-year-old grandfather, Ronald Wells Sr., and cutting off the man's ears. According to the police report, while he was being questioned.
In 2021, the small town of DeLand, Florida was gripped by a shocking case of violence and murder. The local authorities were called to a residence on reports of a stabbing. When police officers arrived on the scene, they were met with a gruesome sight. Colby Alden Parker, a young man covered in blood, was frantically trying to explain what had happened. Nearby lay the body of an older man with multiple stab wounds evident on his body.
About the death, Colby Parker pulled the human ears from his pocket. CBS affiliate WPEC reports the Lake County Sheriff's Office responded to a home in Central Florida.
Colby informed the officers that the person lying nearby was his grandfather. As the officers examined the grandfather's body, they noticed stab wounds all over it. This disturbing discovery raised even more questions. While officers were examining the grandfather, another officer approached Colby for questioning. According to Colby, his grandfather had attempted to hurt him. but he managed to wrestle away the knife and fatally stab his grandfather in the heart.
Saturday night for reports of a man being attacked by his grandfather. According to deputies, Parker claims Wells pulled a knife on him.
The most shocking revelation of the case came when Colby pulled a pair of severed human ears from his pockets. These ears, it later turned out, belonged to his grandfather. Colby had gruesomely cut off the ears of his deceased grandfather after killing him.
Managed to get the knife away, then used it against Wells in what he called self-defense. Investigators say Parker admitted to cutting his grandfather multiple times.
During the investigation, Colby tried to steal a gun from an officer. Additionally, he also attempted to grab a taser, further illustrating his violent behavior. The altercation escalated, and the officers found themselves in a life-or-death struggle. Despite the deployment of a taser, Colby's aggression remained determined.
The butcher's knife also hitting him multiple times with a baseball bat, and they say he also admitted to cutting Wells' ears off and stated he wanted his grandfather to be with his dead grandmother.
As the investigation unfolded, investigators uncovered a disturbing scene within Colby's home. In the main bedroom, they discovered an apron with the words "The Family Butcher" emblazoned on it. Attached to the apron were 2 fake plastic human ears, an eerie discovery. Moving deeper into Colby's living space, investigators stumbled upon a chilling sight. A bloody baseball bat and butcher's knife lay nearby, with blood dripping from the blade. The sight sent shivers down their spines.
Oh. Junior?
Yeah. Where's Junior?
Ronnie Junior, right here.
Ronnie? Okay, what is that?
Those are ears.
Based on the evidence gathered, Colby was charged with second-degree murder and assaulting an officer. His bail was denied, ensuring he remained behind bars until his trial. During interviews with investigators, Colby shockingly confessed the truth behind his crimes. He claimed that his grandfather's death was not a random act of violence, but rather a calculated act. Colby's motive was to reunite his grandfather with his deceased grandmother, which he felt was the only way to achieve closure. Colby Allen Parker's chilling crime was a devastating act of violence, but the next case is just as unsettling. Joshua Ambergy, a man whose brutal actions were driven by rage, leaving a victim's life shattered.
Skyview 12 shows us the home where Melissa Ambergy was stabbed. Now we'll pan over to the house where a neighbor says he spotted that suspect, Joshua Ambergy, on his back patio.
A 39-year-old man named Joshua Ambergy was arrested in Claremont County, Ohio in November 2022 after allegedly stabbing his mother, 58-year-old Melissa Ambergy, several times. The tragic incident unfolded at the Ambergy home in Miami Township, where police found Melissa in the basement. Due to the severity of the injuries she sustained, authorities were forced to airlift her by helicopter to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. However, despite the best efforts of medical professionals, Melissa was pronounced dead upon arriving at the hospital.
That suspect, Joshua Ambergy, on his back patio. That's where we pick up from a body camera on a Miami Township police officer.
Police, let me see your hands. Drop the knife.
At the time of the incident, Joshua was under court-imposed community control, a type of probation alternative to incarceration for a previous offense. Under community control, the defendant is given a set of conditions to avoid imprisonment. However, it appears that Joshua's compliance was lacking, as he violently attacked his own mother.
Officers shouted at Ambergy to drop the knife several more times while holding him at gunpoint. The officer whose body camera we're watching decides to holster his handgun, pulls out his taser.
You got lethal, I got a taser.
When police arrived at the Ambergy home, Joshua had fled the scene, leaving behind the knife he had used to stab her. Officers immediately launched a search for Joshua in the surrounding area. After an extensive search, they eventually found him on the back patio of a nearby home.
You got lethal, I got a taser.
As we zoom in, we can see Ambergy's not listening and holds the knife up in a threatening manner.
Hell's coming at me.
The second officer fires 2 shots.
When officers arrived on the scene, they were greeted by 20-year-old Joshua, who was wielding a knife and refusing to comply with their commands. Despite the officers' repeated commands to drop the knife, Joshua continued to whirl the weapon, posing a significant threat to the safety of both himself and the responding officers. Recognizing the heightened nature of the situation, one police officer made the decision to deploy non-lethal force by using a taser. However, the taser missed Joshua, leaving him still armed with the knife.
2 shots, one of which hits Ambergy in the leg. As he goes down, you can see the knife tumbling away from him in this freeze frame.
Lay down! Lay down! Lay down!
With the situation continuing to escalate, a second police officer felt obligated to take action. In self-defense and to prevent further harm, they fired at Joshua, striking his leg. Joshua was tackled to the ground, immobilized by the gunshot wound. Once Joshua was subdued and on the ground, officers approached and administered immediate medical attention. They applied a tourniquet to his leg to staunch the bleeding and stabilize his condition. With Joshua's life hanging in the balance, officers called for a helicopter to transport him to a nearby hospital for medical treatment.
I talked with Chief Mills about how his officers responded.
When dealing with knives and pipes and things like that we are going to make an attempt to de-escalate.
Joshua was taken to the hospital where he received treatment for his injury. After his release, he was placed in police custody and charged with several offenses related to the confrontation with police. The chief of the Miami Township Police Department addressed the media, calling the outcome of Joshua's arrest unfortunate. However, he emphasized that his officers were forced into the situation and were forced to make split-second decisions.
Gap that we have, the safety gap, we have no other option than to use the force available to us at that time.
The police chief added that one of the officers who responded to the call had contemplated leaving the department due to the psychological trauma they experienced during the encounter. In October of 2023, nearly a year after his arrest, Joshua pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and 1 count of felonious assault on a police officer in a plea deal.
Were the best years of my life I had with Melissa.
During those 42 years, Ted and Melissa Ambergy built a beautiful life. 4 kids, 7 grandkids, and a lifetime to spend together.
During the sentencing hearing, Joshua's siblings pleaded with the judge to give their now 40-year-old brother a lengthy prison sentence because of the psychological hurt they have gone through. Jacob, Joshua's brother, told Judge Haddad that he would feel relieved when this was all over and that he hoped to get justice for their mother.
He picked up that knife. Today is the last day you will ever hear my voice, see my face, and look me in the eye.
Powerful words from family members who vowed to cut ties with Joshua.
Judge Haddad listened intently to the heartfelt pleas of Joshua's siblings and considered the profound impact of his actions on their family. He ultimately made the decision to sentence Joshua to 30 years for his mother's murder and 11 years for the assault on the police during his arrest. Furthermore, Judge Haddad ordered that the sentence for the murder of Joshua's mother be served consecutively rather than concurrently. According to Judge Haddad, this decision was made to protect the public and prevent any further harm. While Joshua Ambergy's act of taking his own mother's life is horrible, it pales in comparison to the unimaginable horror of Cynthia Valera's heinous crime.
Police say it was one of the worst child abuse cases they've ever seen. According to investigators, Varela Casals abused her son Omari and beat him to death 3 years ago.
In 2013, a 9-year-old boy named Omari Varela Casals lost his young life at the hands of his own mother. Omari's younger sister, who was only 5 years old at the time, witnessed the tragic events and tried to intervene, urging their mother to stop kicking and hitting him. Unfortunately, her pleas were ignored. According to Omari's loved ones, he had been subjected to relentless mistreatment at the hands of his biological mother, Cynthia, over his short life. The autopsy conducted on Omari's body revealed he had sustained severe internal bleeding from blunt force trauma. This devastating discovery shattered any hopes that Omari had fallen from a toy horse, as Cynthia initially claimed.
Casals answered our questions while being taken to jail.
It was an accident. I was disciplining him and I kicked him the wrong way. It was an accident.
When detectives questioned Cynthia about her son's death, she initially denied any involvement. However, as the evidence against her mounted, her claims of innocence began to crumble. The inconsistencies in her statements and the overwhelming physical evidence ultimately led the police to charge Cynthia with murder in relation to Omari's death.
It was recommended Varela Casals remain jailed on $100,000 cash-only bond.
The state's concurring. We believe $100,000 cash only.
In an attempt to evade justice, Cynthia tried to claim she was incompetent to stand trial. However, the judge ruled otherwise, determining that she was mentally fit to stand trial. Cynthia's husband, Omari's stepfather, was found guilty of tampering with evidence and acting with reckless disregard for human life. He was sentenced to life in prison.
Is fit to stand trial after allegedly killing her 9-year-old son Omari. This comes just months after her husband, Stephen Casals, was put behind bars.
Astonishingly, the judge decided to give him a reduced sentence of 14.5 years, as he has already served 9 years in prison. This reduction means that the stepfather will be released in just 5 more years. In May of 2016, Cynthia pleaded guilty to 6 counts, including second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison in a stunning plea deal.
Cynthia Varela Casals, CR 2014-00203.
During her sentencing, Cynthia spoke of her love for Omari, breaking down in tears as she addressed the judge. Despite her crimes, she expressed her remorse and begged for forgiveness. However, her sister Sylvia, who had adopted Cynthia's surviving children, had a different story to tell.
I will never understand why all this happened, Your Honor. My sister will have to live with that, what she did to her child Omari.
Sylvia addressed the court, expressing her forgiveness towards her sister. However, she made it clear that she wanted to see Cynthia face a long sentence. She shed light on the tender age of Omari at the time of his death, emphasizing that he had dreams and goals that he would never get to fulfill. Cynthia's other children, who saw the assault on Omari, asked Sylvia, "Auntie, can't Omari be fixed? Can't God or the doctor fix him?"
All rise.
In a powerful and emotional letter, Cynthia's daughter wrote to the judge, expressing her desire for her mother to remain behind bars. The letter, which was read aloud during the sentencing hearing, left the courtroom in tears. Cynthia's daughter, now 7 years old, bravely expressed her deepest fears and the nightmares that still haunt her. Her words echoed the sentiments of countless victims of domestic violence, urging the judge to keep her mother away to protect her safety and well-being. Cynthia Varela's shocking crime was a moment of unthinkable violence, but the next case is equally disturbing. Anna Marie Gaetani, a woman whose brutal actions towards an innocent victim reveal a chilling disregard for life.
January, 40-year-old Anna Marie Gaetani pled guilty to the December 2013 murder of her husband, Tony. He was stabbed to death in the couple's North Bexar County home.
On the night of December 5, 2013 at 9:30 p.m., a Bexar County Sheriff's deputy responded to a domestic violence call at the Gaetani residence. The deputy arrived to witness a heated altercation between 29-year-old Tony and 38-year-old Anna Marie. Tony, who had expressed a desire to leave, found himself in a confrontation with his wife, who refused to let him leave the house.
Stabbed her husband, 29-year-old Tony Gaetani, to death. According to the police report, he was stabbed 17 times, 3 times as emergency responders arrived at the couple's Northwest Bexar County home.
According to deputy statements, Anna Marie grabbed a knife and stabbed Tony multiple times in the upper body. The deputy intervened and tried to subdue Anna Marie, but it was already too late. Tony succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead at University Hospital.
She's since changed her mind about that plea.
I am not guilty of what they're saying that I did in cold blood.
In the aftermath of the tragic incident, Anna Marie was arrested and charged with her husband's murder. Her bond was set at $250,000. 3 years later, in February 2016, District Judge Steve Hilbig sentenced Anna Marie to 25 years in prison as part of a plea deal.
I am guilty of defending my life and my children's.
She claims she had ineffective counsel, that her lawyers only wanted to talk about a plea bargain.
During Anna Marie's sentencing hearing, Alfred Gaetani, Tony's father, delivered a powerful and emotional statement to the court, addressing his daughter's killer directly. He declared, "I do not forgive you for murdering Tony, my son. I curse you for what you have done. I wish you nothing but terrible things in this life, and that when you die, you burn in hell."
We didn't talk about trial, we didn't talk about strategy, we didn't talk about anything like that.
And that her lawyer, David Christian, rushed her into agreeing to the plea bargain that called for a 25-year prison term.
Tony's mother, Jamal Gaetani, also had the opportunity to address Anna Marie. With tears streaming down her face, she expressed her anger and desire for justice. She stated, "I pray that you rot in your prison cell."
And that called for a 25-year prison term.
Christian took exception to Gaetani's testimony. He said they went over the plea agreement several times.
Under the laws, Anna Marie is obligated to serve half of her sentence before becoming eligible for parole. However, despite pleading guilty, she sought a new trial 2 months after sentencing. Anna Marie said she had ineffective counsel when she accepted the plea deal.
He testified that she was not rushed into signing. He said that he advised her that given the facts of the case, a plea bargain was in her best interest.
Other than being under immense amount of pressure.
In her request for a new trial, Anna Marie argued that her legal counsel failed to provide adequate representation and advice. She believed that if she had been properly guided, she would have made a different decision regarding the plea deal. However, her attorneys, David Christian and Pat Hancock, insisted that they had thoroughly reviewed the case with Anna Marie and concluded that taking a plea deal was in her best interests.
She was not coerced, threatened, led the wrong way.
Judge Steve Hilbig denied Gaetani's motion for a new trial. Her lawyer tells me he'll appeal.
Despite the efforts of her legal team, Judge Hilbig denied Anna Marie's plea for a retrial. The judge deemed the evidence presented insufficient to overturn the initial verdict. Anna Marie's newest attorney spoke to the media, stating that he plans to appeal the recent ruling. This new attorney, who has joined the case amidst much speculation, believes there are valid grounds for an appeal. These family killers shattered trust and turned homes into horror scenes. Their outbursts and denials in court show just how deep their cruelty ran, and how high the cost of their brutality truly was.